They say the golden throne is silent, that it hums only with holiness and power. They lie, it groans, it breathes, it weeps. I hear it in the marrow of my bones every moment I stand within the sanctum. The air here never cools, it trembles. You cannot escape the vibration. It passes through your boots, your chest, your teeth. It is like standing inside the dying breath of a god that refuses to end. My name is not important. Names have no meaning in the chamber of the throne. We are not servants, we are extensions, cogs of reverence, flesh machines of obedience. I was chosen from the Schola Progenium for my unwavering faith. But no faith prepares you for the sound that lives beneath the throne. Some call it the breath of the Emperor. Others call it the machine's hymn. I know better. I have heard sorrow take form, and that sound is its voice. Every hour the servitors move in slow, jerking motions along the sanctified rails, their limbs replaced with iron tubes and fluid lines, their faces long since forgotten beneath pale masks. They whisper fragments of binary prayer, endless and hollow. The custodians stand unmoving, statues of living gold, and even they seem diminished before the weight of what slumbers within the machine. None of us speak of it, for words draw attention, and here, attention is peril. The floor hums beneath my feet as I carry the incense canister forward. Its smoke curls like ghosts, trying to flee the chamber, but the air is too heavy. The light from the throne spills through layers of holy wards, gilded cables, and shimmering arcs of psychic energy. To gaze upon it directly is forbidden. Only the Emperor's chosen may see him. Yet sometimes, when the machine flickers, I catch a glimpse, not of his face, but of movement. It was on the 41st rotation of my service that I first heard the other sound, faint at first, beneath the constant droning of reactors and prayers. It was rhythmic, pulsing, almost alive. I thought it to be my imagination, or perhaps the echo of my own heart against the vast metal walls. But when I looked at the servitors near the throne, their heads had tilted, as if listening to. The custodian's visor turned slightly toward me, though his body did not move. In that frozen instant, I felt the truth. The sound was not from without, it was from within. The pulse continued, low and steady, as though the throne itself possessed a heart. Every beat seemed to throb through the chamber, and within it, a whisper echoed not words, not language, but remembrance. I felt it crawling through my veins, dragging memories I did not know I had. I saw terror burning. I saw legions marching into the void. I saw the Emperor, radiant and broken, chained to his creation. Then the light brightened, searing my sight. The sound stopped. The chamber returned to its endless hum, and all motion ceased. Only the smell of scorched incense remained. That was the first time I realized the throne was not merely sustaining him, it was communicating. I tried to forget the sound. For weeks, I convinced myself it had been fatigue, the mind's betrayal after too many sleepless vigils. But the echo lingered in my dreams, resonating through the walls of my skull even when I was far from the throne. There were nights I woke to find blood trickling from my ears, my pillow vibrating with the faint tremor of something beneath the palace floor, in the catacombs below the sanctum. The corridors stretch like veins through the bedrock of terror itself. They are lined with gold and decay, each wall carved with verses from the Lectitio Divina. There is no silence here, only layers of murmurs. You can hear 1,000 prayers spoken at once, recycled through vox grills and echoed across the pipes that feed into the throne. Every word becomes fuel. Every supplication becomes power. We are told this is the cost of his survival. But I have begun to wonder if it is his will that demands it, or the machine's own hunger. During the 73rd cycle of maintenance, I was assigned to oversee the ritual resanctification of the lower conduits, the ones connecting the plasma heart to the psychic amplifiers above. Only 2 of us were permitted entry. The other was a tech priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus, his flesh long surrendered to chrome. He never spoke to me directly, only to the machine, uttering clicks and metallic hymns. His red robes dragged through the sacred oils pooled along the floor, leaving trails that steamed and hissed. When he began the rites, the conduits trembled. Energy coursed through them in pulses, bright, violent, almost furious. He placed his mechadendrites against the wall, and I swear I saw it react, not with heat or motion, but like a living thing resisting touch. The air thickened. The voxcasters sputtered. Then the whisper returned, this time louder, clearer. I could almost make out words. Not human, not divine, but desperate. The priest froze. His augmetic limbs seized mid-motion, his optics flickering. I caught a glimpse of fear, real fear, in his remaining human eye. Do not listen, he rasped, but his voice was drowned out by the rising hum. The conduits glowed white, then gold, then crimson. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, as the whisper became a scream. It wasn't sound. It was memory. I saw flashes of a time before the Imperium, before the wars of unification, when the Emperor walked among men, not as a god, but as one of us. He was surrounded by the same golden light that now cages him. When I awoke, the chamber was quiet again. The tech priest lay motionless, smoke rising from his mechanical spine. The servitors had already begun dragging his remains toward the reclamation units. No one asked what happened. No one ever does. They say those who die in service to the throne are absorbed into its sanctity. But I saw the truth when his body was taken. The machine drank his essence, not in faith, but in necessity. That night, I wrote my first heretical thought. What if the throne is not his tomb, but his parasite? The days after the incident blurred into one another. We are not permitted to leave the sanctum for long. The throne's attendants live and die in cycles of prayer, maintenance, and exhaustion. Sleep is a luxury purchased with obedience. When I closed my eyes, I still heard the hum, always that same low, sorrowful tone, echoing beneath my heartbeat. At times I wondered if I had been marked by it, if perhaps hearing it had bound me to the machine in ways unseen. I began to notice things others ignored. The smell of burnt oil now carried something beneath it, the faint scent of decay. Old and sweet, like dried blood sealed within metal. The light that spilled from the conduits sometimes pulsed unevenly, as though something within struggled against its rhythm. Even the custodians, those perfect guardians of gold, seemed subtly tense. One lingered longer near the throne's base than usual, his hand resting upon his spear as if expecting the machine to move. We are forbidden to speak of what we witness, but silence does not erase fear. In the refectory, where attendants gather for their allotted nutrient rations, I overheard whispers carried in hushed tones, rumors of the heart beneath the throne. Some claim it is a reactor beyond comprehension, older than the Imperium itself. Others believe it is something far worse, a fragment of the Emperor's own essence, screaming to be released. None dare say such things aloud when the custodians are near. To question is to be erased. During my next rotation, I was ordered to descend into the purification tunnels, a labyrinth of pipes and catwalks buried deep below the sanctum. Few go there willingly. The air tastes metallic and sharp, heavy with ozone and sanctified fumes. My task was simple: inspect the coolant lines, ensure their flow remained stable. But the moment I stepped beyond the light of the main corridor, I felt it again. The pulse, faint yet deliberate, it guided me deeper. Each step echoed through the endless dark, my lamp globe struggling against the shadows that clung to the walls. I passed statues of saints whose faces had melted under centuries of radiation. Candles floated in pools of oily water, their flames refusing to die. Then the hum shifted. It became a voice, soft and mournful, whispering through the vents like wind through a graveyard. I could not understand the words, yet they filled me with unbearable sorrow. It felt like the voice of a father mourning his own creation. For a moment, I thought I heard my name. I fell to my knees, trembling, clutching the Aquila pendant around my neck until its edges drew blood. I prayed for forgiveness, for sanity, for anything that would drown out the sound. Then the lights above me flickered. A figure appeared at the end of the tunnel, tall, golden, and silent, a custodian. He did not move toward me. Instead, he raised one gauntleted finger to his helm, commanding silence. His visor glowed faintly in the dark. Then, without a word, he turned and vanished into the black. The hum stopped. The air grew still. When I returned to the surface, I was summoned for questioning. They asked nothing about the tunnels, only whether I had heard anything. I said no. The custodian's eyes lingered on me for several seconds, long enough for me to feel the weight of judgment pressing against my soul. That was the last time. I slept without dreaming of the throne's voice. They say, faith sustains the emperor, that every prayer whispered across 1 billion worlds feeds his light. But here, within the palace, faith is not an idea, it is substance. It burns, it bleeds, it rots. The sanctum reeks of it. I once believed devotion was pure, an unseen river flowing upward toward divinity. Now I know better. Faith here is harvested, processed, and consumed like fuel. The attendants of the inner sanctum call it the flesh of faith. I first heard the term from an old confessor, whose voice was half mechanical, half whisper. He told me we are all vessels of offering. Some give voice, others give body. His eyes were glassy with fervor, but his hands trembled as he said it. Not from age, but from memory. When my new duties began, I was assigned to the lower Biovos, a place forbidden to all but the Adeptus Mechanicus and those marked by the Ecclesiarchy's blessing. The air there was thick with humidity, humming with the rhythm of pumps that beat like artificial hearts. Rows upon rows of flesh tanks lined the walls, each one containing something that once was human. Pale forms floated within, wired into nutrient tubes, their faces erased by growths of organic circuitry. Their chests rose and fell, synchronized with the pulsing of the machine above. I tried not to look, but you cannot ignore the sound, the slow, wet rhythm of lungs that no longer belong to themselves. One of the magos overseeing the vaults approached me. His voice was filtered through a vox grill, flat and hollow. They pray while they dream, he said. Their faith is purest in unconsciousness. It feeds the throne without resistance. I asked him what would happen when they stopped dreaming. His optic implants flickered for a moment before he answered, "Then we wake another." I realized then that the servitors who vanished from the upper levels did not die. They were recycled into these sanctified shells, their devotion converted into a perpetual offering. The machine consumed them not with hunger, but with necessity. One cycle later, I was called to assist with a ritual extraction. The Margos explained it was to renew the faith conduits, a phrase that sounded holy but reeked of blasphemy. When the process began, the flesh tank opened, spilling viscous fluid across the floor. Inside was a form so mutilated by machinery it no longer resembled human life. Tubes emerged from its spine, its veins glowing faintly gold. I felt bile rise in my throat as I realized that the fluid, flowing from the conduits above, the same fluid used to cool the throne's systems, was drawn from them. I asked the Margos if the Emperor was aware of such a thing. He turned to me with something that might have been a smile, though it never reached his mechanical eyes. "The Emperor sees all," he said, "and yet he allows." That night, I prayed not to the Emperor, but to the silence between my thoughts, the one place where faith could not find me. When I awoke, my hands were trembling, and beneath my fingernails was the faint shimmer of golden residue. It pulsed softly, like blood still alive. The golden residue beneath my nails would not wash away. No matter how I scrubbed, it shimmered faintly in the candlelight, like a living wound that refused to close. I hid my hands beneath my robes, fearing what others might see. But when I entered the sanctum again, I noticed the same faint glimmer on the skin of others, the attendants, the priests, even the custodians. It was as if the machine marked us all, binding us to its purpose. We were becoming extensions of its faith, our humanity corroded by proximity to divinity. I began to understand the pattern of the prayers now, not as words, but as rhythm. Each litany, each ritual recitation was tuned to the machine's pulse. The sermons were not for men, they were for it. Every syllable vibrated through the chamber, through the conduits, through the bodies of those still dreaming in their tanks. The throne was not merely fed by devotion, it orchestrated it. It conducted the entire palace like a living cathedral, a choir of voices turned inward upon a god that could no longer respond. During one of the longer rituals, a priest near me faltered. His voice cracked, and his chant fell half a beat behind. Instantly, the machine's hum shifted. The lights above dimmed, and the air pressure changed, pressing down like an unseen hand. The priest gasped, clutching his chest as his rosarius shattered in his grip. He screamed, and for a moment, the glow within him intensified, a bright, white light bursting from his eyes and mouth before collapsing into silence. The others continued chanting as though nothing had happened. His body was removed, his ashes gathered, and the prayer resumed. I kept chanting, though my voice trembled. I had learned what happened to those who broke rhythm. Later, I saw the priest again, or what remained of him. His ashes were mixed into sacred oil and poured into the conduits beneath the throne. The Margos said it would renew the cycle of belief. I wanted to scream, to renounce it all, but my voice failed me. The smell of burning incense filled my lungs, sweet and suffocating. The more I served, the more I felt my thoughts were no longer my own. Dreams came in fragments, gold, light, screaming metal. Sometimes I awoke to find myself standing before the throne without remembering how I had come there. My body moved through rituals I had not chosen. My mouth whispered prayers I no longer believed. The machine was inside me, humming in rhythm with my heart. One night, when all others had retired, I approached the lower platform. The air shimmered with psychic heat. Beneath the throne's shadow, I saw something impossible, a human figure kneeling before it. Clad in torn vestments, the figure's face was hidden by a broken mask of gold. Its voice was soft, trembling, yet unmistakably human. It whispered into the darkness as though in conversation. For a long moment, I believed it was praying, but then I realized it was pleading. I stepped closer, heart pounding, but the moment I crossed the circle of light, the figure turned toward me. There were no eyes behind the mask, only a hollow glow, like a candle trapped within bone. The figure spoke, its voice filled with despair. "It's not faith that sustains him," it said. "It's guilt." The figure's words struck me like a weapon. Guilt. The word echoed in my mind, twisting through my thoughts until I could no longer separate it from my heartbeat. Guilt, the kind that corrodes from within, the kind that lingers after victory, when triumph has already turned to regret. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the moment I blinked, the figure was gone. Only the whisper remained, fading into the constant drone of the machine. After that night, everything changed. The sound of the throne was different now, not merely mechanical, but layered. Beneath the hum, I could hear the faint rhythm of breathing, and under that, the slow crackle of psychic fire. I began to feel it in my bones again, the same vibration that once nearly drove me mad. But this time, I understood its cadence. It was not random. It was penance. The ecclesiarchy insists the emperor's suffering is holy, that his eternal torment keeps the galaxy alive. But as I walked among the conduits, the bios, and the endless halls of chanting voices, I realized that this torment was not divine sacrifice. It was self-inflicted punishment. The throne was not merely a life support device. It was confession given form. Every bolt, every conduit, every bound soul was an offering to atone for something so vast, so unbearable, that even gods could not forgive it. During one cycle, I caught sight of a custodian entering the vaults, alone. Unescorted, his armor dimmed to a matte shade of gold. That was unheard of. The custodians never came here. Their duty was to guard the emperor, not witness the machinery that kept him alive. Yet there he was, moving like a shadow, as if searching for something he could not name. I followed at a distance, the hum masking my footsteps. He stopped before a sealed chamber. Its door was marked not with the aquila, but with a symbol I did not recognize, a circle bisected by a blade. He stood there for several minutes before kneeling, his hand pressed against the metal. I heard him whisper words no custodian should ever speak. "Forgive us, Father." When he left, I approached the door. The surface was cold, but pulsed faintly, like the skin of something sleeping beneath. My reflection shimmered upon it, distorted, warped by unseen motion. I placed my palm where his had been, and in that moment, a flood of images poured into me. I saw the Emperor not as he is now, but as he was before, radiant, commanding, surrounded by suns carved from his will. I saw betrayal, fire, and despair. I saw a man who had sought to save humanity by caging its soul, and in doing so, had damned his own. The throne was his prison, yes, but also his sentence. The machine does not only sustain him, it judges him. Every day, it forces him to relive the moment he chose, power over mercy. I tore my hand away, gasping. My skin smoked where it had touched the surface. The mark burned into my palm, glowed faintly gold, then faded to ash. That night, I heard the machine whisper again, not as a hum, not as a voice, but as a command that came from inside my own thoughts. "Tell no one." I obeyed. There are eyes in the palace that never close. You feel them before you see them, that faint prickle between the shoulders. The sense that even your thoughts are being measured. I used to believe it was the Custodians who watched us, those silent gods of flesh and gold. But the longer I served, the more I realized their vigilance was not the only one. There are watchers older than the Imperium itself, and they do not wear armor. The first time I saw one, it was not during duty, but in the hours between sleep and prayer. I had fallen half-conscious at my station, my head bowed in exhaustion, when the light around me dimmed. I looked up, and the air had changed. The radiant glow of the throne turned pale, as though veiled by frost. And there, standing between the columns, was a figure wrapped in shadows, its outline blurred by distortion. It had no face, only a suggestion of one, a hollow imprint where features should be. Yet I felt it studying me, and in that gaze was neither malice nor mercy, only observation. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt thick, heavy, like stone. The figure tilted its head slightly, the motion slow, deliberate. Then I heard the voice, not through my ears, but inside my skull. "You hear him," it said. "That is why we watch." The light flickered. The figure vanished. The hum returned, deeper now, as if something vast had just drawn breath. I sat frozen, my pulse echoing in my skull. The words replayed again and again. "You hear him." When I told the others, they dismissed it as exhaustion. "Visions are blessings," one priest said, his eyes glassy with devotion. "The Emperor reveals himself to the faithful," but his voice trembled. I think he had seen them 2 days later. As I made my way through the Vox corridors, long tunnels filled with cables that pulse like veins, I caught sight of another figure. This one moved within the cables themselves, its shape flickering like static across the metal surface. I stopped, breath shallow. It mirrored my movements. When I raised my hand, it did the same. I realized with a shiver that it wasn't mimicking me, it was studying me, like a reflection learning to become real. Then came the whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping, layered within the static hum of the conduits. Some were prayers, some were sobs, others were pure, wordless longing. They spoke of the witness, an entity that existed between machine and mind, a fragment of the Emperor's consciousness left adrift within the throne. It watches, they said, not to protect, but to remember. That night, I dreamt of the throne collapsing into darkness. From the ruins rose countless figures of gold, their hollow faces glowing faintly with the same pale light as the watcher I had seen. They surrounded me, whispering in unison, "He cannot die. We will not let him." I awoke screaming, my throat raw, the echo of their chant still ringing through the chamber. The next morning, I found a mark on my neck, faint, circular, the same symbol I had seen carved upon the sealed door in the vaults. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and then went still. That was when I realized I was being marked not as a servant, but as an observer. The mark on my neck throbbed for days, a faint, rhythmic pulse that matched the hidden heartbeat I had once heard beneath the throne. I tried to hide it beneath my collar, but it burned whenever I stood near the conduits or heard the Custodians reciting the litanies of protection. It was not pain, not exactly. It was recognition, as though something unseen was testing whether I still belonged to myself. I began to sense the witness more often, not as a shape or a sound, but as a presence pressing against the inside of my skull. Sometimes it came during the midnight rites, when the chamber was lit only by the faint glow of the throne's aura. The prayers would reach their crescendo, the air would shimmer with heat, and then everything would go still. A silence so absolute it drowned thought. In that silence, I could hear breathing, not mine, not human. It was vast, patient, ancient. I remember one night in particular. I was alone, cleaning the lower stairs that led to the maintenance gantries. The others avoided that area. They said it was spiritually unclean, that the machine's hum faltered there. The corridor curved downward, its walls covered in Haphorist murals, depictions of the emperor before the throne's construction. His face was serene in those images, untouched by agony. I had always admired them for their beauty, but that night the paint seemed to ripple, as if the wall itself breathed. The air chilled. The candles dimmed. I turned, and the witness was there again, not in form, but in reflection. Its outline shimmered on the wall beside me, formed from shifting light and static shadow. When it spoke, its voice was not one but many, layered over each other like echoes of different lifetimes. "You wish to know why he does not wake," it said. I wanted to answer, but my throat closed. "He cannot," the voices continued, "for to wake is to remember." The reflection wavered, and for an instant I saw 1,000 faces, superimposed warriors, priests, psychers, and something else, something golden and radiant, screaming silently from within the light. "What are you?" I whispered. The witness tilted its head, the motion slow, deliberate, human in its tragedy. "We are his thoughts, trapped in the amber of guilt. We are the memory he cannot bear." And then it vanished, leaving me in the dark. When I returned to my quarters, I found my data slate flashing with a message that should not have existed. Its text was ancient High Gothic, the words flickering like fire. "The Emperor's gaze is turned inward. He watches himself." For the first time in my service, I questioned whether the Astronomican's light truly came from his will, or from the echoes of his remorse. Later that night, I stood beneath the great oculus of the palace, staring up at the polluted heavens of terror. The light of the Astronomican burned faintly through the smog, distant, constant, unwavering. But for a brief, impossible moment, I saw it flicker, and in that heartbeat of darkness, I thought I heard him whisper, not in command, not in prayer, but in sorrow, "Forgive me." After the night, I heard him whisper. Nothing in the palace sounded the same. Every echo carried a tremor. Every silence felt inhabited. The Emperor's presence was not distant anymore. It was intimate, suffocating, as though the air itself had become aware of me. The witness had marked me for a reason, though I still did not understand what that reason was. I tried to cling to duty, to the rhythm of ritual, but even the sacred litanies had begun to fracture. The prayers felt hollow, mechanical, their cadence no longer invoking reverence, but fear. I started noticing them everywhere now. The watchers, the half-formed figures that flickered in the peripheries of light. Some appeared only as distortions across the golden surfaces of the throne's architecture. Others as faint silhouettes reflected in coolant pools. They never moved directly. They simply appeared as if awareness alone could summon them. I learned not to look too long. When I did, my thoughts began to unravel, dissolving into fragments not my own. One cycle, I was summoned by a custodian, the same one I had seen months ago, kneeling before the sealed vault. His armor gleamed like the surface of a dying star, dim and heavy. Without speaking, he gestured for me to follow. We descended through layers of sanctum I had never seen before, each one colder, quieter, further from light. The sound of the throne grew distant, replaced by a low, resonant thrum, something older, deeper. At the end of the descent was a circular chamber, lit only by a single lumen suspended in midair. The walls were etched with symbols that defied interpretation, curves within curves, shapes that seemed to shift when I tried to focus. The custodian stopped at the center, turning toward me. "You have heard him," he said, his voice resonant but weary. "That is why you were chosen." I wanted to ask who had chosen me, but the question never left my lips. He raised his spear, the blade humming softly. "The witnesses are fragments," he continued, "echoes of what was left behind. They observe to ensure the sin remains contained. But the throne stirs, and the echoes grow restless." He lowered his voice. "You must not listen again. The last who did believed they could save him. They tried to wake him. The palace still burns in the scars of their failure." His words sent a chill through me. "What sin?" I asked. The custodian paused, as if weighing the weight of truth. "The emperor sought perfection," he said finally. "But perfection demands sacrifice. He sacrificed himself, but not enough. There are parts of him that would rather end than endure. The throne prevents that." Before I could speak, the lumen above us flickered. The shadows on the walls began to move. They crawled upward, merging into a single form, a vast silhouette crowned with light. The custodian stepped back, lowering his spear. "He sees you now," he murmured. "Do not speak." The air thickened. My vision blurred. In that shimmering mass of radiance, I saw a face, ancient, sorrowful, infinite. The emperor, not as statue or god, but as something profoundly human, eyes filled with endless remorse. His lips parted, and though no sound emerged, I felt the meaning within my soul. "Remember." Then the light shattered, and I collapsed. When I awoke, the custodian was gone. The mark on my neck had vanished, but the hum of the throne had changed again, slower, deeper, like a heart preparing to wake. They say the emperor's light is eternal, that even in the deepest void, his will burns brighter than any star. But here, beneath the throne, I have seen that light flicker. I have felt its warmth grow cold, its pulse falter. What they call eternity feels more like endurance, a god's punishment stretched across 10,000 years. After the vision, I could no longer stand before the throne without trembling. The hum that once lulled me into prayer now felt like breathing, slow, heavy, uneven. The witnesses no longer appeared, yet their absence was worse. The silence they left behind was alive. It pressed against my mind like static, as though the walls themselves strained to whisper a secret forbidden by time. Then came the summons. A black-robed custodian approached me during my duties, his armor dim, his expression unreadable. "He calls," was all he said. I followed without question. We descended through the sanctified gates, past the layers of gold and faith, down to the level no mortal was meant to see. The air grew colder, thinner. I could feel every heartbeat echoing in my chest, answered by another rhythm beneath the metal, the pulse of the throne itself. At last, we entered a chamber, vast and hollow, its walls carved from black marble streaked with veins of faint gold. In the center stood a single console, ancient, adorned with the sigil of the Mechanicus, long before Mars had ever knelt. The custodian gestured for me to approach. Upon the console was a single data slate, its surface flickering with faint symbols. I reached out, my hand trembling, and the moment my fingers brushed it, the chamber dissolved. I was standing in another time. The air was bright, clean, untouched by decay. I saw the Emperor, not as a corpse, not as a myth, but alive. His presence radiated like the dawn of a new world. Around him, figures knelt, his sons, his creations. Their armor shone like suns. They spoke of unity, of destiny, of a mankind unshackled by gods. But even then, in his perfect face, I saw it doubt. He looked upon them not as a father, but as a man who feared what he had made. The vision shifted. I saw the throne, not golden, but skeletal, vast and unfinished. Its frame pulsed with psychic energy, its heart still unformed. I heard his voice, calm yet burdened. Through this, I will ascend. Humanity will no longer need gods. Then came the darkness, screams, betrayal, the ruin of sons. I saw him wounded, radiant blood spilling like molten gold. The throne completed, not as a beacon of ascension, but as a cage. He bound himself to it, flesh and spirit, sealing his will within the machine to preserve what remained. But there was something else, a shadow within the light, a fragment of himself left apart, screaming in silence. When the vision faded, I was on my knees, gasping, the custodian's hand upon my shoulder. His voice was soft, almost human. Now you understand. The throne is not his salvation. It is his repentance. I looked up at the vast golden cables above, each one pulsing with divine light. For the first time, I realized what they were: veins. The Emperor was not being kept alive by the machine. The machine was alive because of him. After the vision, I could no longer breathe the same air. The palace felt heavier, as though the very weight of the Imperium pressed upon my lungs. Every hymn, every chant, every whispered prayer now sounded like chains rattling in rhythm with his agony. I had believed we served the Emperor. Now I knew we served his punishment. The custodian led me from the chamber in silence. His steps echoed like thunder across the sanctified floor. But his shoulders sagged, the golden armor dull with centuries of burden. At the threshold, he stopped and turned toward me. "You will not speak of this," he said, though his tone carried no threat, only sorrow. "The galaxy cannot bear to know that its God suffers by his own hand." I wanted to ask why he stayed, why he endured the torment, why he didn't simply let the light fade. The custodian seemed to hear the question before I spoke. "Because he fears what comes after," he murmured. "There are things even the master of mankind cannot face again." He left me then, ascending toward the light, while I remained below in the dark, surrounded by the sound of the machine that had become his tomb. I thought I would weep, but there were no tears left. Instead, I felt only a strange clarity, a sense that I had witnessed something sacred, not because it was divine, but because it was unbearably human. In the days that followed, I moved through my duties like a ghost. No one noticed the change in me. Perhaps they saw too many like it. I heard whispers among the attendants. More had begun to hear the throne's pulse, to dream of light turning black. The witnesses appeared to them, too, though none admitted it aloud. Fear spread quietly, like rot beneath gilded marble. One night, I returned to the lower levels where the vision had first come to me. The halls were deserted. The conduits pulsed faintly, each rhythm syncing with my heartbeat. I closed my eyes and listened. Beneath the hum, beneath the countless prayers carried through the air, I heard him again, faint, fractured, but there it was not a command this time. It was confession. I sought to free them, the voice whispered through the metal, but I became the cage. They worship the prison, not the truth. And I cannot die until they let me. My breath caught. The air shimmered. I saw faces in the gold warriors, psychers, saints, all bound by light. Every one of them was praying, and every prayer chained him tighter. I fell to my knees, pressing my hands against the floor. "Then tell me how," I whispered. "How can you be freed?" Silence answered. Then, faintly, the sound of a single heartbeat, not the throne's, but mine, slowing, synchronizing, merging. The realization struck me with terrible clarity. The machine didn't just feed on faith, it consumed identity. Every believer, every servant, every voice that spoke his name became a thread in his eternal imprisonment. The Emperor was never alone on the throne. He was surrounded by billions of souls who refused to release him, and I was one of them. When I stood again, the throne's light flickered once more. For the briefest instant, I saw it dim, not in weakness, but in choice. As though he had heard me, as though he wanted me to remember. I have stopped counting the days since the revelation. Time has no meaning within the palace. There is only the hum, the light, and the slow decay of thought. Each moment feels like eternity folded into itself, a constant cycle of prayer and penance. I still perform my duties, but now I do so knowing they feed the very suffering I once worshipped. And yet, I cannot stop. None of us can. The throne binds us all. There are nights when I return to the catacombs beneath the sanctum. I walk among the conduits that pulse like veins, listening to the faint heartbeat within the gold. Sometimes, I hear whispers from those who came before attendants, priests, even custodians, their souls woven into the machine's endless litany. They do not speak words, but memory. They show me what it means to love something so completely that you cannot allow it to die, even when death would be mercy. I understand now. That is the Emperor's sin, not pride, not conquest, but love. He loved humanity too much to let it fall, even if it meant damning himself. And we, in our worship, have mirrored that sin perfectly. We cannot release him because we cannot bear to live without him. Once, I tried. I stood before the throne during the final cycle of maintenance, the sanctum filled with incense and light. The machine hummed like a wounded animal, its glow flickering across the golden walls. I approached the dais, trembling, and whispered the forbidden prayer, a reversal of the litany of endurance. A plea not for his strength, but for his rest. The chamber shuddered. The servitors convulsed in unison. Sparks erupted from the conduits as psychic pressure crushed the air from my lungs. I fell to my knees, blood spilling from my nose, my ears filled with the sound of screaming metal. Then, within that agony, I heard it again, his voice, "Not yet." The words were not denial, they were sorrow, a promise that even gods can break only in time. The light surged, blinding and beautiful, flooding the chamber with gold until I saw nothing but radiance. For one heartbeat, I felt everything, the galaxy, the warp, the endless suffering of a billion worlds, all tethered by his will. And beneath it, a longing so profound it broke my mind open. Then the light faded. I awoke, lying beside the throne, the custodians surrounding me in silence. None spoke. None needed to. They had seen what I had done, and they understood. One of them, his voice quiet and old beyond imagining, whispered as they carried me away. Another witness, another confession. Now I write these words not as testimony, but as absolution. The Emperor's sin is not his alone. It is ours, shared and eternal. Every prayer whispered in fear, every act done in his name, binds him tighter to the golden prison we call salvation. He cannot be free until humanity learns to live without gods. I know I will die soon. The hum grows louder each day, the machine hungrier. Perhaps my body will be offered to it, my faith turned to fuel. But I no longer fear that fate, because now I understand the truth. The golden throne is not the end of the Emperor. It is the beginning of his forgiveness, and somewhere, deep within that eternal machine, I know he still whispers one final plea, not for himself, but for us. Remember me, but let me go.